Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. It's March 1st, 2022, the 166th birthday of McLeod County. So happy birthday, McLeod County. And we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone with a cap, please remove your cap for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, good morning, everyone. Consideration of agenda items.
I have an addition, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Item under administration, I'm going to add item D, please. That would be an update on the material recovery bid process for the sort line equipment. And Mark Teletsky will be giving that update.
Any other additions or corrections?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I'll move agenda approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Smalls and seconded by Commissioner Luthens to approve the agenda. All in favor? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Any additions or corrections?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Nagel and seconded by Commissioner Smalls to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Information and technology. Matt. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Here this morning to request consider approval of quote to upgrade the county's network firewall from Fireverse of Minneapolis, Minnesota for $150,534.18, including installation plus the cost of shipping with funds from the information technology budget. The current network firewall was purchased in 2014 and will enter end of support later this year. The network firewall protects the county network and enables secure access from remote workers. A new upgraded network firewall will enable us to better protect against cyber threats and attacks. An additional quote was received from Converge One for $154,278.38 plus $19,744 for installation.
Any questions for Matt? It's another one of them necessary deals that in technology that we need. So, any questions?
Mr. Chair, Matt, what happens to the old system, or am I way off base here?
The old system will most likely just get scrapped.
All right, thank you.
Is there
Move to approve.
a motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve? Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Environmental. Morning again, Mark.
Morning, everyone.
Happy birthday, I guess.
Well, thank you. You're not supposed to know that.
Why?
Because I don't think you're supposed to age.
I'm not having any anymore, so just send out a note.
I have two items for you this morning,
Switching subjects.
both related. I'm going to take item A, and this is to consider conditional use permit 20-20 by Matt Pervasky, representing Nokomis Energy LLC, Minneapolis, Minnesota, for the essential service of a 1 megawatt community solar garden, to be known as South Garden LLC, interconnected to an Xcel Energy substation for the purpose of electrical generation through solar panels. The applicant negotiated an 8-acre land lease agreement with property owner Thomas G. Horseman. The lifetime of this solar garden per the project submittal is estimated at 35 years. The existing land use is tillable acreage with physical characteristics of gently rolling tillable acreage with soils described as prime land per the McLeod County Soil Survey. This property is zoned agricultural and is located in the northeast quarter of Section 16 in Winsted Township. In January 2022, the McLeod County Attorney's Office received judgment from the Minnesota Court of Appeals, sending this application back to the McLeod County Board of Commissioners for approval subject to reasonable conditions. What led us to that is we did, as a county, deny this project originally, and the applicant did file an appeal with the State Court of Appeals. With that being said, if there is consideration to approve this request, I would ask that the following conditions be considered with any approval. Number one, a bond or letter of credit in the amount of $134,000 be provided to McLeod County Environmental Service Office prior to any permits being issued. This surety reflects a cost to McLeod County of $40 per panel based on 3,350 panels, 3,350 panels. Number two, the applicant shall restore the site to its original and natural state once the solar facility is no longer in use. Number three, contractor's proof of insurance during the construction of the facility be provided. Number four, contact person and phone number for weed control and other concerns will be filed with the Environmental Service Office, and there shall be a placard posted at the entrance visible from 230th Street, County Road 5, naming a contact person with a current phone number. Number five, a landscape buffer plan and vegetative management plan shall be provided to the Environmental Service Office. Including in the plan shall be a row of maintained, healthy, living 4-foot trees with vegetative shrubbery along the exterior perimeter of the project boundary. This buffer shall be planted and maintained to remain healthy and live. Number six, a 10-foot agricultural fence with 24-inch kick plates mounted at a 45-degree angle toward the exterior of the project area shall be installed for site security and safety around the perimeter of the project area. Number seven, applicants shall meet all NPDES permit requirements if required. Number eight, applicants shall preserve the existing drainage tile and repair if any tile is broken. Repairs shall be performed by a drainage contractor. Number nine, applicants shall apply for a McLeod County land use permit within 1 year if approved. Number 10, applicants shall submit an approved interconnection agreement from Xcel Energy within 1 year from date of conditional use permit approval. Number 11, stray voltage testing shall be completed prior to construction and prior to energization of the project. Results shall be submitted to McLeod County Environmental Services within 30 days of testing. Those conditions are consistent with other projects that we've approved in McLeod County. So with that being said, I'll turn it back to the board. Again, this is a 1 megawatt solar project in section 16 of Instead Township on property owned by Thomas Horseman, applied for by Nokomis. And this was remanded back to us from the Court of Appeals. So Matt is present. If there is an opportunity you want to hear from him, and I do believe we have one member from the Winston area that may want to speak as well.
Thank you, Mark. No, it's from personally, it's laid out the way it is. So I thanks Mark for laying it all out from us. But does their board have any questions for Mark?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I see that someone from the audience has request for comment.
Would you like to address the board? Come on up, say your name and.
Just a reminder, our microphones, if you can just, you have to speak pretty closely to them, and this one on this side actually works better if you want, if it's available. Thank you.
Okay, I'll make sure I lean correctly. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, for letting me speak here today. I'm Matt Pravratsky. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Nokomis Energy, a Minnesota energy company you just heard about based in the Twin Cities. I did join the company after the original application and Court of Appeals process was already underway, so I hope you'll appreciate I'm coming to this. Just happy to be able to try and move this forward under reasonable conditions as the court ordered, and get these things done. I think a lot of the conditions laid out by Mark and the staff are incredibly reasonable. I think two I will raise just brief comments about. First, in terms of the fence. Our company has done dozens of solar projects across Minnesota, including in this area. And while many counties actually require no fencing, it's not uncommon for some fencing requirement to be in place. However, a 10-foot fence with a 24-inch kicker is well outside of the norm, both for this area and surrounding counties. For example, Grassland Solutions, a company based just north of here in Cokato, has installed over 100 ground-mounted solar arrays over the last few years, and they said, quote, they've never seen a fence with these specifications installed on a solar facility. In their experience, standard fencing, when fencing is required at all, is typically 6 to 8 foot of vertical agricultural fencing, for example. And that recommendation matches our survey of policies from nearby counties and other counties we've worked in. And just the surrounding counties, for instance, Carver County requires a 7-foot fence. Meeker requires no fence. Renville, Sibley, and Wright counties require a fence of some kind, but no minimum height is placed. And in other counties such as Waseca, Rice, et cetera, no fence is required. Our request would just be that a 7-foot agricultural fence would be the adjustment to the conditions, or if that is not deemed reasonable, a 7-foot fence with maybe a 1-foot kicker, which is more common from installers such as Grassland Solutions. And then next, just in terms of the decommissioning bond, the rate of $134,000 for a 1 megawatt project for record is, from what we could see, is nearly 6 times the cost charged for all other recently projects that were actually constructed in McLeod County. So it's, a rate much higher than what we've seen. And so we would suggest a reasonable compromise of $25,000 per megawatt, which again is the highest decommissioning bond we could see from a project that had been constructed in McLeod County. And I know speaking with Mark lastly, I would say I really want to thank Mark for his work in being open and transparent with us, having good conversations. It's been very productive. And I know certain projects have come through and gotten other conditions in a CUP, but I think there's a reason that those projects haven't been constructed yet, and it's because those conditions can be somewhat difficult to meet. So again, thank you so much for the time to be able to speak to you today.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
what is the difference in cost between the 7 and the 10-foot fence?
I'm sorry I can't speak directly to the precise difference in cost. What I can speak to is one thing Grassland mentioned is because it's just a much less common offering in the marketplace, that it's actually not something that companies are used to installing at all. And so the installation and construction ends up being something that they're not prepared to undertake. And so it's if that makes sense. I don't have the precise dollar figures. I'm sorry for that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Question, I guess I'll direct this to Mark. Mark, I want to be consistent with these applications as they come forward and as they're built. So what have we specified for fencing in our previous solar applications?
So the last applications that we've approved as a board were both with these conditions, similar conditions. There was a project north of Winstead, similar area, if you will, that these same conditions were applied to. And the reason for the change in the conditions from the county, working through this with the Planning Commission, is the need to get away from barbed wire. There was concern with neighborhood opposition in regards to using barbed wire on some of these fences. So going to an egg fence with a kick panel versus barbed wire for humans and for animals, wildlife, was the desire for that. And working with some of the individuals that have granted or have gotten approval, it hasn't necessarily been a concern of theirs, to my knowledge, on the cost. There's engineering and there is some lead time issues with the equipment that they're using. And so we aren't specifying exactly what has to be done. When we say egg fencing, a lot of those individuals are going to use a wood post, and then they're going to use a bracket on top of that to mount. And the designs that have been brought forward to me, during their land use permit have been acceptable to what we expect. So cost does not seem to be of the concern.
Thank you, Mark, for explaining that. And Commissioner, I mean, there's obviously going to be supply line problems, and this has been ongoing, trying to find a compromise with landowners, and I mean, this has been an ongoing issue for some time. And in my opinion, it's a reasonable compromise to try to move forward.
And I don't know if it's appropriate. It's similar to the industry. I have recently received a call from one of the contractors that are applicants that have had a project approved and was inquiring on the need for an extension. I asked why, and it's lead time issues, strictly lead time issues, not necessarily with the conditions, with their equipment, H-piles, panels, that type of thing. So the build out on these projects, obviously, for where we've been in the last 2 years, has been difficult, I believe, on all types of industry. But that's here nor say to this particular request. This condition is more along the lines of trying to meet the needs of McLeod County and get away from the barbed wire. And if you look at the National Conservation, NRCS, National Conservation Research Center, at the federal level, they state that same thing, that barbed wire should be used limitedly and it should be simply used for agricultural herding purposes, ranching, that type of thing, not used for security on a project similar to this.
I'll follow up with the fencing now. What exactly fencing are we talking about using here?
So it's a
And
10-foot.
What's the height?
10-foot height agricultural fence with a 2-foot 45-degree angle kick plate. So ag fencing is your cattle panels, basically. They come in typically 4 or 5 foot sections, and then they mount the bracket on there that will come back to the exterior of the perimeter that makes it difficult for individuals to crawl over that.
Individuals or animals, for that matter.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, Mark, can you talk about the connection fee? I don't quite understand all that.
The interconnection piece?
Yes.
So the interconnection requirement that we've adopted in ordinance after this application is something that they have to apply for and provide to XL Energy, who is the provider of this. We typically don't get involved in that connection fee, and I don't want to even speak to the engineering cost, but as we heard when we went through the amendment process, that there is considerable fees associated with an interconnection request, which is why some companies elect not to do that up front prior to getting local approval.
Because they might be denied and can't go forward from the county.
If they expend dollars through an interconnection fee, if you will, engineering service or whatever, a study, and then they come to the local government and they get denied, then they're out those dollars.
It costs more to do the engineering for the interconnection fee than it does to go through the zoning process. So they want to go the cheapest route first. And your new ordinance makes them do the engineering first, but that doesn't apply to this application nor to the next one because they were pre-ordinance.
All right, thank you.
And then I might as well just follow up on the bond. I mean, there's too many unknowns right now with where the panels are gonna, where they may or may not go, whether they're hazardous and all that. So I feel that where you landed on this is reasonable. I don't know if anybody else wants to touch on that, but.
I'll follow up, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
On the decommission bond, did we not approve 1 megawatt bonds in the neighborhood of 175,000 or 150? What have the last few bonds been on our applications?
They're rooted in. So I think what you're asking is one of the last applications we've seen in the past, there was more panels for that 1 megawatt project. So based on the technology that's being asked for in the narrative of the application, that determines what our bond number is. So for instance, if you have 3,800 panels for a 1 megawatt project at $40 a panel, that bond request is going to be higher than the 3,350 that they're asking for here. I'm very comfortable in that number as of today. That number comes out of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is a federal think tank, Department of Energy, Colorado Springs. And so those numbers they give us on the recycling of that panel plus what a cost for a contractor, a local contractor would be in the event we have to go in and pull out the H-piles, the conduit, the concrete, the inverters, so forth. I'm very comfortable with that number today. The things that we've struggled with as a board, as a staff, I think, that is not unique. It's across most counties that are dealing with this today, is we don't know what inflation's going to do 40 years from now. With that being said, I'm proud to say that I was part of an effort early on in this process. A number of years ago, spoke at a roundtable with MPCA, and they're in the event, I think that some of you know, are trying to figure out a recyclable process that are going to, I don't want to use that for better lack of the term, hold the industry accountable for being able to deal with waste when that does occur. So what does that look like? That's to be determined, but the state is working on that project right now to figure out what kind of dollars are needed to be put up in escrow in the event that they're needed to be utilized.
And I've worked with Mark several times on landing on this number. I actually had thoughts myself of being a little higher, but because there's so many unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen, what they're going to classify it as in 10 years, 20 years, or where these places, the transportation right now to get them to where they need to go is high. So I say it, I think we're at a reasonable compromise here to, obviously, if everything's done right, it's a bond. They get to, whatever's not used to get back, but.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
and Mark or Matt, to help me understand this, we've got less panels, so, but we're still at a 1 megawatt, and our charge has been consistent at the $40 per panel. So why do we have less panels? Is it a panel that is larger physically in size, or is it an efficiency part of the project? Of last year's panels or 2 years ago's panels versus the panels that you're proposing?
It may be, Board and Commissioner Smalls, it could be any of the items you just spoke to. So panels do have somewhat different levels of efficiency in production based on if they're 2 years, newer or whatever. There's also different panels utilize different technology. For example, if there's a tracking system, it may produce more energy per panel because it follows the sun throughout the day, or even if it's bifacial, where it's actually getting energy off of some of the reflection on the ground as well. Even if it doesn't seem like you would get that much, it can increase production. So different panels can produce, even if the panel number is different, the production can be different.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Mark, what happened to our condition of vegetables, growing vegetables? Because didn't we had that condition on the last two?
We did. This was not part of this request, and the county board did deny this request originally, and because the appeal went to the Court of Appeals, that wasn't part of the application. I would have to defer to legal if that's a reasonable condition or not.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Or Mike, you
Mike,
have anything?
Mike, if you wanted to respond to that, please.
I'll let you.
No, just respond to the question.
Well, it wasn't a part of the initial application process.
Okay.
And what had happened is that they applied probably 2 years ago now.
Yep.
And you denied it about a year ago. And the flowers and vegetables and that kind of stuff has all been within about the last 9 months. So you really shouldn't, you're supposed to look at this in terms of where we were at about 2 years ago.
But we put all these other conditions on.
And we were putting those conditions on back then as well.
Okay.
And Commissioner Luthen's like, maybe I can help here a little bit. I mean, this has been a struggle for me as well. I mean, these permits, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Mike, we argued this at the Court of Appeals, or we did what we had to do, and this is what came out of it. And again, working with I'm still a prime farmland guy. I mean, it's just, that's what we do here. But I still have this, I struggle between the landowner rights to make a contract with an individual. So I struggle with that. But these two are a little different because they were applied for before. I mean, it's kind of hard to do, but we have to go back and put our thinking caps on back to when they first applied, and these weren't part of those restrictions or conditions. Go ahead.
And I would say too, commissioners and Commissioner Luthen's, those agrivoltaics and having native grasses or vegetables or other things going on with our arrays, those are things that we as a company are comfortable and have done with a lot of our projects. So that's something I can actually bring back to our shop to do regardless of the conditions being discussed. I will say just, and in general, just to thank you again for letting me speak, I will just mention, I very much appreciate, the need to balance all the needs that, Commissioner Kruger spoke to, the private landowners' ability to contract with us, as an entity, but also the neighboring property owners, all of those things. I will just say, and, I appreciate the way the comments have been going. I sort of understand where the votes may lie, but I will just, say, I think based on what we've seen in surrounding counties and across Minnesota, and even based on previous work that's been done in McLeod, it would be our position that especially the fence and decommissioning costs are, or the fence requirements and the decommissioning bonds are definitely outside of what we would consider to be a reasonable condition. And I'll just say that for the record. I've said it before, but I also appreciate what's been said today.
And thank you for those comments, and I'm sure on a marketing aspect, if that grows, it'd be to your benefit to get into that, whether it's grass or vegetables or whatever. I'm sure every site is going to be a little different. But if you have any question, go ahead.
Yeah,
Anybody from the
and this will be my
general
last.
Pardon? Yeah, I will in a minute.
This will be my last. Being the close proximity of the residents to the east, are we able to step up the screening to separate this solar from that residence? I don't know the exact footage between the solar versus the outbuildings. We do have screening on the plan. Can we do a better job of screening to isolate that residence to the east?
We certainly can work with the applicant to implement something to that east boundary, and I have heard from that property owner to the east, the owner of that property, and obviously he is in objection to this, Mark Setterholm. He's in objection to this, but at the same time, we can work on that screening piece. We do not have a separation distance in ordinance that would apply and force the applicant to meet that. But in speaking with Matt, I will not speak for Nokomis. I do believe that's something we could definitely work on.
Is there any more questions for the board, or else I'm going to ask for any public input on this particular issue? Anybody in the audience that wants to speak to this? Come on up and state your name, please, and where you live.
I'm Dustin Meredith. I live to the west. I'm just wondering if we can impose more stray voltage testing, maybe for like the first 3 or 4 years every month. I know it seems like a lot, but with the cattle around there in that area, it just seems like a good idea. You got something to base your levels on for future instead of just doing it every year.
Do you guys want to address, that's one thing we didn't talk about today, but there is already some testing done on the stray voltage. Could you just address that a little, Mark?
So the conditions that were brought forward were conditions consistent with other projects, and there were some concerns in those areas as well with livestock. Again, stray voltage is all over the board. I think we know that, and it's a concern, and it is real. And so to test for that, again, working with a lot of the applicants in discussion on this topic, it is to their advantage to manage any potential, stray voltage of their site due to liability. So the numbers that we put on there, obviously, we want to protect our neighbors. We want to protect the interests of McLeod County. And I believe that, the applicants have that same desire because of liability concerns.
And I'll just say briefly, in a previous life, I worked with the rural electric co-ops and actually helped them put together their stray voltage guidance. And so I know it's, a real concern. I will say with both fencing requirements, frankly, of any kind, and with the initial testing, I think it should be handled fairly well. So I don't think we would be in support of additional requirements there, but I think we appreciate that it's a concern and that, there needs to be thought to it.
Commissioner Wright, you're pretty good at the stray voltage. Any comments? Or?
I think, thank you for that. I've definitely followed this quite a bit. I think condition 11 refers to stray voltage testing shall be completed prior to construction and energization of the project. I think as long as there's a baseline established, you have something to go back to. I would assume that if there's ever a suspect of stray voltage, that the applicant would be able to test for that. But establishing that baseline prior to construction is the most important step in trying to hunt down where a problem may be if it does pop up. So.
And that is, as staff, what we would do is reach out to the applicant if there were concerns brought forward to do that testing. If for some reason that testing wasn't something that they would agree to, we would bring that conditional use permit back in front of the board for additional conditions if we felt that need was there. And again, that's for a life safety issue, and for the ordinance, and we have the right to do that.
And I don't want to minimize anything, but I will. We have a good staff in all our conditional use permits. We keep an eye on everything. So that's just a caution to anybody that has one. We have a staff that tries to make sure everybody does what they say they're gonna do. Any more questions?
One more.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. State your name, please.
I'm Lauren Keyser. I have land across the highway. My question is, do they allow, because this is stuff apparently changed since they applied. If it gets obsolete, do they have the right to come in there and change all the panels or change stuff once it's done? I mean, we could see it already must have changed since he applied 2 years ago.
Okay, and I'll take a run at that. As long as they are within the confines of what their current conditional use permit is, then they don't have to apply. But if they were going to make this larger, say instead of a 1 megawatt go up to 2, then they would have to come back and reapply, and a new conditional use permit would have to be considered. The board also has the right to review a conditional use permit at any time if they wish to. So if we ended up with a concern of stray voltage, then we could have a public hearing on it, and we could look at the conditional use permit again.
So if they come out with a new panel, they can rip them all out and put new ones in?
Yes.
Oh.
And hopefully, I understand your concern, and hopefully that would be to everyone's benefit if that happens, but you may address this, how many years what's the life expectancy on these panels? And that actually does relate to that bond. I mean, because if the other option is that it can be obsolete and they can walk away. I mean, you got to face, that's the true facts of it, and you don't want that to happen. So, I mean, technology, it's like your phone. Your phone's good, for about the length from the shop to your car. So, I mean, it changes daily, and hopefully you get a better product out of it. I'm not trying to minimize your concern, but that's
So they come along, put this real ugly panel in,
you want to address that? I don't know that an ugly panel, I mean, that starts to change the whole complexion of the conditional use permit.
Commissioners, Chair Kruger, typically modules are warranted at minimum 25 and maybe as long as 35 years. Typically the warranty is the same length as the financing. So when you see the term here for a 35-year, that's typically the warranty length for the modules. So the only reason to replace is if the technology were so dramatically different that you would want to replace them. But for some background, for instance, when solar panels were put on the White House in 1980, those panels actually still were on there, at the turn of the century. So they're built to last for sure.
Well, and to comment on his concerns, I mean, you could have a hailstorm or a windstorm. You're not going to put some. I don't know of any technology of an ugly. So I mean, depends on what you call ugly. I mean, they're not going to change from what they are today. I don't see that. But
right.
Could you just respond to that concern?
I think in any instance where newer modules are replacing older ones, either because of a storm or because of technology, I think because of the way the system is designed, it would likely be a very similar setup because the mounting is built a certain way, the layout is built a certain way, and so I wouldn't expect the aesthetics to change nearly at all, honestly.
And if they would dramatically, that comes back to our conditional, how the conditional use permit was approved, not?
Yeah, I'll take
Well, I mean, we're getting into some foreign ground here, but.
Yeah, and I would consult with our legal at that time, to see if they're outside the spec of what they applied for, to determine whether or not the conditional use they have is valid for any changes.
Okay, and the reason I'd like to get these questions answered because, I mean, this isn't a regular, this is permits that were requested that we're ordered to get through these things. So we have to find a compromise. I'm not minimizing or maximizing anybody's concerns, but we're trying to get through these the best we can. I mean, I don't want to waste any more, I don't want to spend any more county money, trying to change or do something that we won't get done.
In context, I understand where you were going with that. And speaking as staff, we have exhausted our avenues here. We have amended ordinance, and we haven't had any requests since we've amended ordinance. We are a leader in this area. There are a lot of counties that are reaching out to us, asking for our language of what we've done. We are in contact with our neighboring counties, and we do take this serious. And with that being said, I do appreciate the context that I've had with, especially with Matt and the applicants, because it has been transparent. And at this particular point, because the industry is so new, really, to our area and the few that we've had built out, we don't know what 10 years, 20 years is going to bring. You know, we could see solar irrelevant at that time. We could see it very more prevalent at that time. As staff, I see a lot more individual requests for people putting up panels at their homes, putting panels on their homes, which may in turn lessen the need for the commercial side. So there's an example of where the industry was, where it kind of is today, and maybe where we're heading in the future.
And I would just add to that, and again, I respect your questions back from the public, but you can tell by his comments on our bonding and the size of our fence that this is not a penalty to them. This is a compromise on trying to, make as many people satisfied as we can. So, I guess I don't know. You can tell by what he said, there's other counties are not doing it, and it's a compromise. It's not a penalty. So, I'd just like to emphasize that.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
We're talking about bonding, so do we know what these companies insure these gardens for?
I do not.
Can I be sure?
And that's really none of our business. We don't have any right to ask a feedlot operator the value of their farm. That's none of our business.
And again, I'm as comfortable as I can be with talking with Mark and other counties. And the 134, we have to see how it goes. It's changing every day. There's new questions come up all over. So again, I guess we've reached a point where we have to, what is it, fish or cut bait, whatever. But.
If we did have a storm, a tornado go through one of these, that bond is there to remove those panels if the applicant doesn't do it.
So we got to make sure it's big enough then.
Yeah.
Correct. And we don't know, and no one knows if it is big enough in 10 years. We got it one day at a time.
Well, and you have two different trends going. One, you have the inflation that's driving everything up. The other is you have the technology and experience that's driving costs down. A computer now costs 10% of what it did 20 years ago. And same with phones and same with TVs and all that stuff. But so you have the two kind of competing trends, and who knows where it's going to go.
Can you may have a bond and put like a 3% addition to it every year because of inflation and not knowing?
For us to do that, we would have to know that inflation is going to be 3%. And we don't know that. And we don't have a reasonable basis to state what inflation is going to be.
It could actually go the other way.
It could go the other way.
It could go the other way. So I'm comfortable with the tools we have to work with today. I'm comfortable. I don't know how we can make it any better or worse. It's fair that I can find out if we're going to address these things.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, our planning commission has done a nice job, a very good job, and they have worked through this. They're very thoughtful on this. Commissioner Luthens is on that board. He sees the effort that goes into that. We've got some very knowledgeable people obviously serving on that board in this arena. So we look to them obviously because they have personal experience with that. So again, our planning commission has done a good job, and some of these conditions that we're talking about today are directly from some of those members and the research that they brought forward.
Thank you. Is there any more? Or did you have anything else?
Well, I was just going to, just briefly, Commissioners, to the question of, money needing to be in place in case someone just leaves the garden in a scenario, just a reminder that there's almost no one in this entire situation who benefits by just leaving a garden that's been developed or damaged in a storm and no longer utilizing it. The reason these get developed is because it's a good deal for the property owner. It's a good deal for energy customers. And that garden, once it's already approved, everyone's motivation is to keep that operable and keep it in good shape because that's what the investment was made to begin with. So just to the point of, the bond is there at the very, very most extreme situation, but every person involved in this transaction wants that garden to be producing and to be successful. And so it would be incredibly rare that you would ever want to abandon an asset like that because it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that it's successful and operating because that's where that revenue comes from.
Thank you. Any more questions? Otherwise, I would. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, I know on the straight voltage issue, I've gone in depth in talking about that one, but with my experiences and the people that I've worked with, whether it's a solar array, one of our substations, or anything you plug into the wall has the opportunity out there to do the same thing. And we give it this name, straight voltage, and that's really not accurate to what it is in the first place, but it's the name we stick on it. This issue, consistency is key with the controversy that surrounded many of these applications, whether it's the bond and the fencing and so forth. We're seeing them the same. Make a motion to approve with the conditions as stated.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve with the conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Luthens. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carried. Roll call. Commissioner Luthens?
Approve.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
I am yes. Commissioner Nagel?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmalz?
Negative.
Motion passes 4-1.
Item B, consider conditional use permit 20-21 by Matt Pravratsky, representing Nokomis Energy LLC, Minneapolis, Minnesota, for the essential service of a 1 megawatt solar garden to be known as Crane Garden LLC, interconnected to an Xcel Energy substation for the purpose of electrical generation through solar panels. The applicant has negotiated a 9-acre option to purchase for the project on property owned by Cecil Martin. The existing land use is agricultural with physical characteristics of gently rolling tillable acreage with soils described as prime farmland per the McLeod County Soil Survey. The project is located within the southwest quarter of Section 25 in Winston Township. As stated in January 2022, the McLeod County Attorney's Office received judgment from the Minnesota Court of Appeals sending this application back to the McLeod County Board of Commissioners for approval subject to reasonable conditions. Similar to the last one we just heard, this request is just north of Balo Salvage Yard on Highway 7. And if there is a motion to accept or approve this request, staff would ask for the following conditions to be considered. Number 1, a bond or letter of credit in the amount of $134,000 be provided to the McLeod County Environmental Service Office prior to any permits being issued. This surety reflects a cost to McLeod County of $40 per panel based on 3,350 panels. The applicant shall restore the site. Number 2, the applicant shall restore the site to its original and natural state once the solar facility is no longer in use. Number 3, contractor's proof of insurance during the construction of the project shall be submitted. Number 4, contact person and phone number for weed control and other concerns will be filed with the McLeod County Environmental Service Office, and there shall be a placard posted at the entrance visible from County Road 9 entrance, naming a contact person with a current phone number. Number 5, a landscape buffer plan and vegetative management plan shall be provided to the Environmental Service Office. Included in the plan shall be a row of maintained healthy living 4-foot trees with vegetative shrubbery along the exterior perimeter of the project boundary. This buffer shall be planted and maintained to remain healthy and live. Number 6, a 10-foot agricultural fence with 24-inch kick plate mounted at a 45-degree angle toward the exterior of the project area shall be installed for site security and safety around the perimeter of the project area. Number 7, applicants shall meet all NPDES permit requirements if required. And that NPDES permit, I should have stated earlier, is a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit issued by MPCA for disturbing more than 1 acre of property. Number 8, applicants shall preserve the existing drain tile and repair if any tile is broken. Repair shall be performed by a drainage contractor. Number 9, applicants shall apply for a McLeod County land use permit within 1 year if approved. Number 10, applicants shall submit an approved interconnection agreement from Xcel Energy within 1 year from the date of conditional use permit if approved. Number 11, stray voltage testing shall be completed prior to construction and prior to energization of the project. Results shall be submitted to McLeod County Environmental Services within 30 days of testing. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
And in the interest of time, is there anything you can point out in the, being we just had the long discussion on the first one, is there any major differences in these two requests?
There is not.
I didn't.
The difference would be in the lease area and the nature of the land. I do believe that's the difference between an 8-acre lease and a 9-acre lease, just because of the lay of the land. This one's a little bit more narrower to the north side of some existing businesses to the south and residential agricultural to the north.
With that, questions from the board? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Nathan.
Mr. Chair, and, all the same criteria that I spoke of in the previous application exist for me in this application as well. So I do have a concern about the close proximity of the home and the building site, that this particular plan surrounds on two sides. So I'll ask the same request. Can we look at improved screening on those two sides to isolate this solar a little bit better for that homeowner, for that home site that's close by?
And I'll defer that. So Matt, would you be willing to work on a condition to modify our screening request that you provided to the northeast or to the northwest of this project boundary?
And without looking at the precise location, I can't necessarily commit to an exact solution, but I think we're open to making sure that works. I think in general, to be honest, the fencing requirement, I'll state again for the record, I think is outside of what we've seen as being a reasonable fencing requirement, as well as the decommissioning bond. I'll just state that for the record. But as you said, Commissioner, the projects, I think the same thing stated for both would be true.
The only question I'd have for you, Commissioner, is have you had some ideas? I mean, is your district, have you had some ideas from the landowners or what they'd like to see?
I do not, Mr. Chair, I do not have ideas. I don't know what's being proposed exactly for the screening. Are we talking about 4-foot spruce? Are we talking about a mixture of screening? I mean, my thought process is if we have to isolate from a residence, maybe we don't have to add the quantity, but maybe we can, have less isolation on those field boundaries, those ones like on this particular project that are to the east and towards Balos to the south, but at least concentrate that screening to protect this lot owner and that lot.
And I appreciate that. I mean, I agree with that comment. The types of vegetation that we're looking at, dogwood, some black spruce, arborvitae, those are some of the examples that we've used for screening. We run that by our soil and water office, looking at soil types and what does well in the designated area of the request. So we don't want to put a blanket across there that we're just going to use black spruce or we're just going to use dogwood in any case, because we want that to do well. We want it to survive. We want it to grow. And I believe that's what the applicants want as well, so they're not having to come in and replant to maintain, to try to get that buffer to what it's supposed to be. So I do agree with your comment. I will definitely, if approved, work with the applicant to try to beef up that area, because that is a very, I think, reasonable request to protect those, especially on the aesthetic piece. And I think that is something we can definitely work on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you have your own nurseries that you work with, or I mean, we also have a pretty good staff that you could tap for soil conditions and our SWCD and that you could tap into their knowledge of what the ground conditions are, what grows the best, because it does that. In truth, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, Commissioners, Chair Kruger and Commissioner Smalls, I'm sure we'd be very open to that. We obviously, having to do multiple projects across multiple jurisdictions, I think we do have folks that we've worked with, especially for the environmental testing and things like that, to make sure the sites are being handled responsibly. But in terms of the actual local folks we'd work with, I think we're very open to that, to make sure we're finding the right treatment that makes sense for folks nearby.
And just so we don't have the same conversation that we had with the last one, the record on these two is going to be the same for both, and both the applicant and we are going to agree to that. So if you raised an issue before, you don't have to raise it again now. And that's fine with the applicant.
I don't have anything else unless there's a question from the board. I mean, it's obviously the last paragraph in both of these requests. I would ask the public to make sure they read them, and where they're back, it's back in front of us for a reason, so it's our job to try and find a solution. Any other questions? Anybody want to comment from the audience? Motion made by Commissioner Nagel to approve
Second.
the permit and seconded by Commissioner Wright. Is there any more discussion?
And that is with the conditions that have been outlined.
With the conditions, would the motion maker just state that it's with the
Yeah,
conditions?
that's fine.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call. Commissioner Luthens?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
I am yes. Commissioner Kruger and Commissioner Nagel?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmalz?
Negative.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Health and Human Services, Barrett.
Good morning. I have one item for you today. Consider approval of one full-time registered nurse in the Health and Human Services Department to be on unpaid leave for the period of March 14th to March 25th, which is a full pay period, 2022, 80 hours. This request qualifies under the unpaid leave policy within the McLeod County Personnel Policy and was reviewed and approved by myself, Barrett Spores, the Health and Human Services Director.
Questions for Barrett?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
In reading the request, I think it's good that we maintain our flexibility with our employees. So with what Barrett said, I will move to approve the request.
Motion made by Commissioner Schmalz to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Luthens. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I just want to note that we can't approve all of these. We do maintain flexibility, but it depends solely on the department's availability of individuals to create or to complete tasks. Thankfully, Health and Human Services being one of our larger departments, this is able to happen. So just wanted to note that. Thank you. And that's
Thank you.
to Commissioner Schmalz, it's not your request, but because we did have to deny one recently, so it's just good to remind you guys of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works, John?
Good morning. Two items. Both of these items relate to the replacement of 4 bridges. The 4 bridges are timber bridges, currently deficient, and their deficiency level meets the Minnesota DOT state aid requirements for funding assistance to replace them. We want to get these designs completed and on the shelf, and then we can get in line for state aid funding in future years, similar to what we've done in the past. So the first one is to consider hiring Stone Brick Engineering out of Burnsville for the design engineering services for the following bridges. First bridge is State Aid Project 43598-016, which is Bridge 43501 on County Road 57 over High Island Creek. The cost for that design is $37,439. B is SAP 43598-017, which is Bridge 43507. That one's on County Road 74 over Buffalo Creek. That one's at a cost of $42,217. And item C is, or I should say AC is Bridge 43502, which is on County Road 13. That's SAP Project 4361307. That one is also over High Island Creek, and that's at a cost of $37,954.
Is there a timeline on here, John? I mean, are you, I understand you need engineering work.
Yeah, all of
But
these will be done, their work will be done by the end of the year.
And then the actual bridge,
Yeah, and then we'll get them on the shelf. I'm targeting them for 2024 and 2025, hopefully, should we get funding assistance from the state. So the idea, what they do at State Aid Central Office, so these bridges become deficient, counties get bridges designed, plans signed, approved by the district state aid engineer, and then they go on the shelf and the waiting list downtown, waiting for bridge bond funds. So as the legislature gives funding, there's, they kind of take them in priority order. If there's some that are worse case than others, they might jump up to the top. But if, without having them done and on the shelf, waiting for funding, it doesn't happen, or we can't replace them unless we want to use local money. Which,
engineering design, now does that hold then for a couple of years? I mean, or do we have, we don't
yeah,
have?
we've had instances on that County Road 11 bridge. We were waiting for funding, and it took a little longer, and we went between spec book changes, so we had to do some minor modifications, but 99% of the time, for the most part, they hold.
It would mainly just be the spec changes.
Just small changes.
And the other question would be what, and maybe that's not possible, but what if in this inspection you find a deficient bridge? Does that open a whole new can of worms, or that's not possible?
We just had our annual inspections just this past fall, and most of these were on there, and there's nothing that is, critical deficiency.
Okay.
If there were, then we'd close it, and then they would ramp that to the front probably.
Mr. Young, can we
We've had
take
that in the
all of
past.
these at once, or?
Sure.
So,
Move to approve the hiring of Stonebrook.
motion made by Commissioner Wright to hire the engineers to engineer these three projects. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Smalls. Any more discussion?
We ought to have a cost not to exceed. John, do you have the total for those three?
Yeah, it's on there,
It's
whatever
on there,
not
all
to
the-
exceed. Each one is not to exceed.
You don't have a total for all.
Well, add it up quick. I mean, it's for each per bridge. I mean, it's, I guess I'd recommend you do each bridge not to exceed.
So you want them done one at a time?
I think so.
Okay. You'd like them done past one at a time, is that correct?
Well, it shouldn't matter, I guess. There's, so the total would be,
Just do them one at a time. I don't want him to make a mistake. I don't want him to make a mistake on his
No, and
ad and that screw us up.
And if we have to come back, we're probably better off addressing one at a time, so
Right.
go ahead.
I'm going to change my motion to approve the hiring of Stonebrook for, you want the whole number in there, 43-598-016 for not to exceed $37,439.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve A. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Smalls. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. B would be 43.
Move to approve not to exceed $42,000.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Luthens. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. C 43-613-007, Bridge 43502, replacement.
Mr. Chair, move to approve request not to exceed $37,954.
Motion made by Commissioner Smalls. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Luthens. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
and item B, similar to the descriptions for the previous ones as far as timber bridges, we'd like to hire Erickson Engineering out of Eden Prairie to design SAP 43617-010. That's Bridge 43505 on County State Highway 17 over Highland Creek, and that one is not to exceed $38,800.
Just a real quick, obvious question. Why, I mean, two different engineers, is it just?
We've gone between both of them before in the past. kind of like to mix it up a little bit to keep them honest.
I totally agree. I just thought I'd ask the question.
Move to approve for the not to exceed the 38,800.
Motion made by Commissioner Wright to approve 43-617-01.
Second.
Bridge 43505, seconded by Commissioner Luthens. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Review of Commissioner calendars. Sheila, do you have anything before we go into the calendars?
No, I'll add when you guys are done with yours.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Luthens?
Thank you, Chairman. We go back to the 15th County Board Workshop, and I had a Prime West meeting on the 18th. And the following week, we had the Health and Human Services, and in the evening, McLeod County Extension meeting. Next day, Wednesday, Planning and Zoning. And 25th, Buffalo Creek Watershed meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Wright?
Okay, after our last workshop, also spent time with Meeker County and Wright County in the Regional Extension Service on our position of a horticulture specialist. We had to cast a pretty wide net to find applicants, but I think we found a super applicant that will be able to take that spot, and waiting to hear back if that has been accepted. Extension meeting, Darrell mentioned we had a county extension meeting, and also we had a budget meeting last week as well. That's the main ones.
Also had the after board workshop on the 15th. We had a CRF meeting, committee meeting, with a presentation from some questions that we have for the requests that are being made. I had a ditch meeting on the 27th with the joint ditch with Wright and Carver counties, and it's got continued to hopefully a meeting in the next month. And that I also had an Health and Human Services Community Health Board meeting. I had several interviews on the 23rd. We also had our HRA board meeting on the 23rd, considering our budgets and our spending for 2022. Another CRF meeting on the 24th with the same agenda. I attended on the 24th Morningside 212 roundabout. The presentation by the Department of Transportation was up at the city center. It went surprisingly well. Some good points were made on some additions or corrections, however you want to look at it, but they were well taken, so we'll see how that goes. And that evening I also had a meeting with Township and Glencoe City Fire Department on their budgets for 2022. And yesterday afternoon I had a Mid-Minnesota RTCC workshop, or in other words transportation, with some of our challenges to move people around. Well, this happens to be a district, but mainly to McLeod County. So with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After the last board meeting, attended the workshops, had a law library meeting, and maybe Mr. Young will do a better job expanding on this, but we don't have a ton of those meetings, but for the newer commissioners, we're required to have a law library, and we're required to meet certain expectations for that facility. So that's part of what we did that day. It was more equipment or software, I guess would be a better way to explain it. And then really the only other thing I had the last couple of weeks is some budget meetings, and similar to Commissioner Wright. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Since our last board meeting, of course, we all did our workshop on the 15th. And then I'm going to Friday the 18th I, along with Daryl, attended the Prime West Joint Powers Board meeting, luckily by Zoom. And in that meeting, I guess the update, that Prime West is working on is the disagreement that they're involved with DHS at the state level. And it involves county-based purchasing for healthcare plans. And I will say that it is expanding because it's not just Prime West, it's other healthcare systems in the state of Minnesota. And the result of the dialogue that has taken place with DHS has been that there was a request for mediation prior to filing a court action, and DHS basically refused to enter any mediation. So they do feel the need to proceed with court action on that account. And then after that meeting, I had a CHS meeting by Zoom as well. Following week, on the 22nd, Commissioner Kruger and I attended a Joint Powers ditch meeting with Carver County, where we're looking at, Carver County is looking at doing redetermination and historic review. And that meeting was followed by an HHSC meeting here at the Government Center. Wednesday, the 23rd, we had a Labor Negotiations Committee meeting where we had dialogue between one of the unions that are active in our county and our county employees. And on the 24th, I had a UCAP meeting in the evening by Zoom as well, and that brings us to today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmalz. Sheila?
Thank you. I want to welcome our new facilities supervisor, who is a returning employee to McLeod County, Spencer Bauer. Joined us again yesterday and is our new facilities supervisor. So,
good morning.
Morning.
Welcome.
Spencer.
Thank you. Happy to be back at the county and in a new role. So.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead with the agenda. Colleen?
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
I'm here this morning to ask you to consider ratifying the professional service agreement between the Minnesota Counties Computer Cooperative, MNCCC, Joint Powers Organization out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and TriMen Systems, Inc. out of Roseville, Minnesota, for the maintenance and support of the Integrated Financial System Platform Independent, which is what we call IFSPI. And this is effective January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. This agreement commits the participating members for the term of the contract and the financial obligations associated with this agreement. The maintenance and support service agreement is for the financial system and for the following departments: Administration and Human Services. The MNCCC annual user group fees are $1,800. This is a new fee that was not in the previous contract, but it was by the joint, all of the counties agreed on that $1,800. And that fee will be split evenly between Human Services and the general fund. And then I had an error on here, so I just want to spell this out. The annual enhancement fees are $1,200, and the maintenance and support fees are $13,170, which are also split evenly between Human Services and the general fund.
Thank you, Colleen. This is your wheelhouse. I guess I'm going to, how, do you have anything else to say about the agreement, or?
No, it's our financial system we've had, since well before I came here. And it's a robust system owned by the counties, basically, through the MNCCC.
I'll just add to that. I know that Colleen and Deb Crooks and the other people who work with financial system, they've done work in reviewing other systems, other options, and seeing what's available or what is needed. And I've asked those questions repeatedly, probably driving them nuts, but this is the system that is most reliable for us right now and what we need. anything else that we would be coming to you with, because you know that we've been reviewing other pieces of financial reporting and systems, would support this effort. So this is the necessary system, in my opinion.
Questions from the board?
Colleen, do you want to add, how many counties is it that, isn't it the majority of the counties?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. Do you know
Over
that?
80? I could be incorrect with that, but I asked that question as well when we were looking at different software, and this is the only one I hear mentioned.
I think there's a
Typically when we are
couple larger ones that maybe have their own system, but
you.
most of counties our size are using this platform.
Not that that's a
Before we make the
decision maker,
motion,
but-
can you just go through those changes or what?
Yep, the fees, because I had it written down that the enhancement fees were, oh, sorry. I had the enhancement fees listed as the $13,170. That's actually the maintenance and support fees that are that much. The enhancement fees are $1,200.
And the $1,800 is just,
That's a MNCCC annual user group fee.
okay. Any questions everyone understand? I'll make the motion to approve this agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wright. Any more discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B, notification of McLeod County Drainage Authority public hearing on the engineer's historical review report of the drainage system as originally constructed or subsequently improved of county ditches 5, 13, and 29. The Drainage Authority will hear public comment regarding the engineer's report in the Martin McLeod boardroom here at the McLeod County Government Center, 520 Chandler Avenue North, Glencoe, Minnesota, on Tuesday, March 1st, today, 2022. County Ditch 5 at 1 o'clock p.m., County Ditch 13 at 2 o'clock p.m., and County Ditch 29 at 3 o'clock p.m. Item C, notification of board workshop following the board meeting on March 15, 2022, here at the McLeod County Government Center, 520 Chandler Avenue North, Glencoe, Minnesota. And item D will be covered by Mark Zaletsky.
Thank you. So the last item this morning, it is an add to the agenda, as you're aware. We received bids. We put out for a bid notification for the McLeod, for the material recycling facilities sort line equipment that we had. That notice ran for at least 10 days in our official county paper, which was the Glencoe Chronicle. We posted this to the website. And to date, we received one bid, one non-qualifying bid. It was a bid from Green Machine, the individuals who sold us the equipment originally, and it was a bid to market. So with that being said, at this time, what we would like to do is circle back to the interested parties and determine if we open the bid process up again, making them a little bit more transparent to what the requirements were of the bid, or come back in front of the board at a workshop and discuss a potential marketing agreement with Green Machine for that equipment. The number that they'd given us in value was, in my mind, an adequate number, meeting the minimums. But what that does is it locks us in to a marketing agreement with them for the sale of the product. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Young if he's got comments on the process.
The fact that you haven't had a bid submitted means you don't have to go through the bidding process again, but you can contact who you think might be interested parties, and then you can approve a purchase on a one-to-one basis or a marketing agreement with this green, whatever company there.
Green Machine.
Not Green Forest.
What I know about it, I guess my feeling is that, you know, it being a time crunch, some of these didn't come in till what, this morning or like yesterday you said, or the one we
I received the email yesterday, you know, looking through this, and by the time I worked through that process, I did speak with Mike about this. there was some concern in regards to, whether or not it was a complete bid. They had not seen the requirement of any potential money or bond, performance bond and/or down payment with the bid. So, or even reference to that. I did make an attempt to contact them yesterday. I was not successful to see if they wanted to amend it potentially from a marketing agreement to a formal bid, and they did not do that, or they haven't commented yet. Maybe I have something on my voicemail when I get back, but that's where we're at today. So
How much time would be comfortable for you to do this?
I think it would be prudent for us to just put it on the next board workshop, have that update given then, and then direction as to what you would like to do moving forward. Because we started the process, I do know that the 3 individuals that were originally interested in that, I do believe are still interested. I think, again, I hate to do that, speculation, but the one of them was concerned that the bid process would bid them out of the process.
Sure.
So they were afraid of the number that they were looking at. And without disclosing any of that information, I do believe they're interested in what we've got for a minimum. So I think it's prudent for us to circle back to those interested parties to see if there's any interest.
Mr. Young, can he keep working on this without any kind of a board action until we have, or do we need to?
Yes, any final sale would have to be approved by the board.
Sure.
But the process, you can direct him to contact who he thinks are the interested parties, and you could approve a private sale if you wish when you come back.
Should we direct that with a board action, or can he?
No, this is just fine. He will come back at the next workshop that the board has, which I think is going to be on the 15th, isn't it? I think so.
Yes, it is. That's what we just noted.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Well, it's up to the rest of the board. I'm okay with that. It's fresh in everyone's mind now, and you're working on it. Obviously, it always goes to the 11th and a half hour, but that's good. I don't know. I hear anything from the board.
I agree. That's the right thing to do.
And I appreciate, Mike's effort on helping us through that process. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where it's a lot easier to work within the requirements of statute. So we've gotten through the minimums, and not that that's good or bad as far as a transparency piece, but it's not like we have a constituent, I think, on Chandler Avenue that's going to want to come in and utilize the sort line equipment. So it's a specified clientele, and I believe that if we work with our current vendors, it might inspire 1 or 2 more, but I think at the very least, we might as well keep working on those interested parties that we have.
Thank you. Any more questions from the board? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Open forum. I guess the only thing that I have is happy birthday again, McLeod County, 166 years, and I'm ashamed to say I had to be reminded of that, but I'll try to note it down that this is our birthday. Press relations. I know you're good, John. Hearing none. Our next meeting will be on March 15th, 2022, 9 a.m. here at the McLeod County Government Center, 520 Chandler Avenue North in Glencoe. So I had to take a motion to recess.
So moved.
So made by Commissioner Wright. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Nagel. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're recessed.